I think one of the most exhausting things that we can do as human beings is trying to force ourselves to do things that are not in alignment with ourselves. And this is like forcing ourselves to find motivation, or forcing discipline, or forcing productivity, or forcing certain situations in our life or experiences in our life that is not aligned with what we want to do, not aligned with who we want to be, and just doesn't fit for some reason or another. There's this pressure in society to like force everything, to push past being tired, to force productivity, all this pressure to like fit into these boxes that might not even be who you want to be or do what you want to do. And you hear it everywhere, and you're influenced by everyone just pressuring you to do certain things, or you're even putting pressure on yourself, and you're hard on yourself to try and fit and meet these expectations that you put on yourself. Whenever I pressure myself into doing something that maybe on a subconscious level I know I shouldn't be doing, or is not good for me, or not aligned, it always ends up failing. It ends in burnout. It ends up with me feeling even worse about the situation. It ends up with me in situations that I don't want to be in. It ends up in me exhausting myself. So if you find yourself forcing yourself to follow certain routines, or forcing yourself to find motivation toward goals that you aren't even goals that you want to be doing, or aren't even aligned with you, or you're forcing yourself to be in situations that you think are good for you, but you constantly feel this resistance, or you constantly feel this hesitation, or you constantly feel like your gut's telling you something's off and you choose to ignore it, that's only going to keep you more stuck. And the more and more you force yourself to do these things, the further behind you will find yourself to being where you want to be. So I just wanted to have a cozy, comfy chat tonight just about like why forcing yourself doesn't work, and just talk a little bit about times in my life where I have really just tried to force myself to do things and it has not worked out, and what I've learned in the process. If you're new here, welcome to the Serenity Nest. This is a channel where we talk about finding direction in life, shadow work, overcoming blocks, and building a life in alignment. If you like this video, or you want to see more videos like this, don't forget to hit the subscribe button below. I'm growing my channel and it would really support me. So when I talk about forcing things, I really mean like forcing productivity, forcing motivation that's not there, and maybe it's not there for a reason, or forcing even like emotions, like forcing yourself to feel certain things, or forcing yourself to do all of these things that you know deep down you don't want to do. And usually there's this like expectation that if you don't want to do something, or if you find that you actually can't do something, that you just need to push harder. Like you just need to suck it up and push harder and just keep trying. And again, like when it comes to something that is actually aligned, that's great. Like continuing to work toward that goal and continuing to grow on your self-growth journey, and to again, like get through the things that are actually keeping you stuck. That's great. That's not what I mean by forcing. That's not what I mean by pushing through. I'm talking about things that are misaligned, things that you know are not good for you, or ways that you're trying to force an identity shift that is not either ready, or it's just not a person that you really should be becoming. And that's why so many people are feeling burnt out and lost, because they continue to push and push and push and push and force themselves to do this, and keep forcing themselves and keep pushing, instead of listening to their body, instead of listening to their heart, instead of listening to their soul, instead of listening to their brain. Maybe sometimes, sorry if you hear that noise in the background, that's my water filter. Anyway, so when we are forcing ourselves to do these things, that is the time that you should not be forcing yourself, and you should be pulling it back and listening to yourself and figuring out why it feels forced. Something that is truly in alignment with you should not feel forced. And there's a difference between feeling scared to do something, or trying something new that you've never done before and you're really nervous or you're really anxious, but you still feel that gut feeling. You know what I'm talking about? That gut feeling that's like, oh yeah, I'm still on the right path. Like I still feel like this is the direction I need to be going. Like I just feel like I have to do this. That's completely different than the feeling you get. And I'm sure a lot of people know what feeling I'm talking about. When you are forcing something and trying to make something work that is not working, something that you keep trying to force yourself to do, or a situation that you force yourself to be in, or like trying to really make something work or pursue something, whatever the case may be, that is just simply not working. And you keep finding yourself going backwards and backwards and backwards in the same positions, continuing to stay stuck, continuing to feel unfulfilled, continuing to feel like you're not healing or growing. And that's why, because if you find yourself forcing yourself to do these things, then it is not in alignment. And it's really important that you figure out why. Not a lot of people figure out why something is not in alignment or something doesn't feel like it's flowing for them. We get caught up in life, and a lot of our thoughts are so automatic that we don't take enough time to stop and really think about what's going on. We live so much on autopilot that we might not even know what we're trying to force, or it might be so automatic to force these things that we don't know anything different. So like in my own life, I've noticed that I've forced productivity in the past. I still struggle with this too sometimes, and where I just have this whole plan in my head, and I've laid out the whole routine, and I've laid out goals, and I have everything set because I love to organize. I love planners. I love laying everything out. I have a whole like 2026 binder of goals and charts that I made, and check like checklists and everything laid out. And sometimes when I do that, and in the past when I've done that, and I've pushed myself and pushed myself and pushed myself to stick to certain routines every day, I have exhausted myself. I've burned myself out, and I've continued to push. Or then the shame comes in where it's like, what's wrong with me? Why can't I just stick with these schedules or these routines? Other people can do it. How many of you have that voice in your head saying, other people can do it? Why can't I? So there's these comparisons that you have with other people, and then you just get into the loop of pushing yourself, feeling guilty, pushing yourself, feeling shame, pushing yourself, wondering why you can't follow the routine or why you're not good enough. Continuing to push yourself, feeling burnt out. Instead of just stopping and figuring out, why am I forcing myself into a routine that I think is good for me? Like, what is it? And so I didn't realize that maybe it's the routine. Maybe it's the goals I'm working toward. Maybe it's my energy level. Maybe it's my body. I deal with a lot of health issues, and forcing myself into these productivity routines, maybe I should have in the past, absolutely, actually, I should have in the past recognized that maybe my body and my brain and whatever the case may be operates differently than other people. And then I need to adjust according to who I am and what I need and what's in alignment with me. So I don't know if any of you have experienced that, where you have pushed yourself to follow certain routines and goals. And again, that doesn't mean that you can't follow these. That doesn't mean that you can't have the discipline to work toward goals that are truly meaningful to you, and to have healthy motivation and push yourself in a healthy way. But it's when you are exhausting yourself and forcing yourself to follow these routines when it is simply not working, that's the point where you need to ask yourself, what is actually happening, and why am I not able to follow through? Like, why am I feeling exhausted and guilty and hating myself, for not doing a goal that I thought was good for me? Another thing that's happened to me too that seems to be really common is when you get that initial excitement too of like creating a goal or creating routines or building schedules, whatever the case may be, you get that excitement, but then it fades very quickly after. And so you lack consistency, or you find yourself hesitating before things actually get going. Or even once things start going, you find yourself getting less excited and starting to get a little nervous. And so this can mean different things, but sometimes if you find that that's the case, maybe that goal was not meaningful to you. Sometimes we build goals and we get excited because we see other people doing it, or there's so much scrolling online on social media and we're like, oh, I want my life to look like that, or I want to follow those routines. And sometimes, again, that can be healthy. But if you find yourself like just creating goals for the sake of creating goals, and then dropping off when you start to work toward it, and continuing to force yourself toward those goals, even when that resistance starts coming up, or you start like dropping off and you start to just kind of feel, this isn't for me, and you keep forcing yourself toward those goals because other people are doing them, that's such a great time to stop and say like, okay, Is this goal actually meaningful to me? And why do I feel like I'm forcing myself to work toward it? Another way of looking at that is sometimes routines fail not because of consistency or a lack of discipline or a lack of motivation or all of these things that we tie it to. Sometimes they just fail because they are not meant for you, because those goals are not meant for you, because that direction in life is not meant for you. And you need to figure out why. You need to figure out why, first of all, why you're forcing yourself to work toward that direction in life, but also what direction you actually need to be working toward. And this is where a lot of people think, I should be doing this, I should be living my life like this, I should be following this routine. A lot of shoulds, but there's no like reflection on what weight that holds in your life. Another great example of this in my own life that I've struggled with in the past is staying in jobs that are not meant for me. And these have been situations where I've thought to myself, well, I should be here. I should be doing these things. It looks good on paper. I should be enjoying this because that's what I studied. Instead of actually listening to my heart, instead of actually listening to what I really want to do, what's really meaningful to me. And because of this, I experienced massive burnout. And because I kept pushing myself and pushing myself and pushing myself and forcing myself into these career roles that were not meant for me, just because I felt like I should be enjoying it or I should be doing this. And again, it just looked good on paper. So, I thought I had to follow a certain direction in life, and turns out that that direction wasn't it. And on top of that, there's pressure from everybody. There could be pressure from your friends, your family, your coworkers, your colleagues, anybody kind of encouraging you to stay following that direction when, again, you know in your heart that that's not the way to go, and that you're burnt out and that you don't want to do this anymore and you're unfulfilled and you want to really go into another career direction. But you keep forcing yourself in that direction and just continuing to get burnt out. Feeling that burnt out, heavy feeling is information. I always say this because those feelings are so important to pay attention to. They're important because they give you answers to what's wrong and what's misaligned. And then one other example that I can think of is when I've forced emotions. I've tried to force positivity. I've tried to force motivation. I've tried to force these emotional states, which led to emotional burnout. So feeling exhausted in a completely different way. And this goes for all of the people pleasers out there, all of the empaths. I'm an empath. And so there's a lot of attuning to other people's emotions and energy. And so in my past, I've done for years too much forcing of emotions and not setting those emotional boundaries. And so I learned how to start setting those emotional boundaries so that I'm not emotionally burnt out and there's that separation. But before, it would get to be too much to the point where then I was emotionally burnt out. So if you relate to any of the experiences that I shared about my own life and you've experienced that yourself and you're still kind of struggling with it, just ask yourself, where do I feel resistance? Where do I feel like I'm really forcing myself in a way that just feels extremely uncomfortable and not natural? And areas of your life where you just keep forcing yourself and finding yourself back to where you don't want to be. So it's just this giant cycle of feeling exhausted or burnt out or heavy or tired, or like you're just following a path that does not feel right, but you feel like you should be following it, and you just keep forcing yourself, and then you find yourself back here again. Practice getting curious. Practice stopping. Practice holding space for those feelings. Try to break out of it. Stop and pause and ask yourself, why am I forcing myself to do this? What is the motive? What's driving me? How do I feel? Is it something where the harder I keep pushing, the further back I find myself in life? And doing so can make such a positive change in your life, where you really start to learn what your life of alignment actually looks like. Because a true life in alignment, forcing is not necessary. Forcing doesn't exist. There is no forcing. Things come naturally and they feel right. Even that doesn't mean it's not hard. That doesn't mean that it's not scary, but it comes naturally. It feels good. It feels exciting. It feels fulfilling, and it feels peaceful. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. This is just another kind of sit down and chat about things that have been on my mind. But again, if you like videos like this, feel free to like this video. Feel free to subscribe down below, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.